إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ولا يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا أما بعد إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الحديث حديث محمد وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. First and foremost, I want to apologize for my tardiness. There was some mix-up in the address, so my apologies for that. We live in a culture and in a society where me and I come before we and us. From a young age, we were taught, or our kids are taught, have it your way. Do whatever you have to do to get to the top of the ladder. Things like self-care and self-love are trending. Even from parents, you hear things like, when my kid is 18, they're on their own. As if as soon as they turn a certain age, we lose all sort of financial responsibility over our kids. And at what cost is this type of mentality creeping up into our own society and our own communities? At what cost are we succumbing to this individualistic mindset where I, me, the self is the priority over everyone else, and sometimes even more important than the duties we have to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's coming at the cost of our kids, our youth, even our adults today, feeling like strangers in a room full of people. It's coming at a cost of feeling like we don't belong, even though we have X number of followers on social media. I ask myself and all of you, when is the last time we gave preference to someone else over our own selves? I'm not talking about that, simply awkwardly holding the door because you see someone else coming behind you. Yes, that's a nice thing to do. Or thanking the cashier because they helped us buy our groceries. Again, it's a nice thing to do. Let's keep doing those. But I'm talking about truly, truly choosing someone else, sometimes even at the expense of our own time, energy, and finances. Today I want to talk about this topic of being selfless, and it's something that I think and wish we would be talking about more. The Prophet ﷺ says in a hadith, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. Many of us have probably at some point heard of this hadith where the translation goes, none of you will believe. Look at this, the emphasis that the Prophet ﷺ was saying. لا يؤمن, from Iman, none of you will have faith until you love for your brother or sister what you love for yourself. The Arabic word for displaying selflessness or being selfless is ithar. It's not just talking about, being generous or giving in charity, but it's the quality of being able to give up something when you see the need in other people for it. Someone might be hungry and they bought a meal, but they see someone else struggling, they see someone else starving, so they practice ithar and they give up their meal because they see someone else needs it more, even though they themselves in that moment might have been hungry. They might have wanted that meal. They might have been craving that meal, but instead they saw someone else and they gave it to the other person. And there's no better embodiment of this than what took place during the seerah after the migration. After the Muslims migrate from Mecca to Medina, there were so many stories that I came across, and unfortunately we don't have the time to go through many of them, but so many examples where the Muhajirin and the Ansar displayed selflessness. They embodied this characteristic of ithar. One of those stories that I came across that I would like to share is the story of Abu Talha al-Ansari, a famous Ansari companion. And it's recorded that one of the companions came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said, "My family is hungry, we don't have any money, we don't know what to do." So the Prophet ﷺ said, first he took it upon himself, let me see how I can help this person. So he goes home to his family and asks, is there anything we can do to help? And the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, they say, we have nothing but water. So the Prophet ﷺ goes to the other companions and he makes an announcement to the public, to the community. He says, is there anyone that can help this individual and their family? So Abu Talha al-Ansari, he steps up. He says, yes, I will help them. So he goes home, talks to his wife and asks, what do we have? And she says, we have this little amount of food, maybe we can serve them that. So the guests come over and he tells his wife, put the kids to sleep before the guests come. Before the guests come, make sure the kids are asleep so they're not worried about them being hungry. So when the guests come over, they put the food in front of the guests and he instructs his wife, just dim the lights in the area where we are sitting. So the guests eat and they leave. They don't realize that Abu Talha and his wife sitting in the dark, they didn't even eat. They were pretending as if they ate so that the guests didn't feel bad, but he dimmed the lights so that the guests couldn't even see what they ate, or whether they ate or not. So the next day the Prophet ﷺ, the companion goes to the Prophet ﷺ and he tells him what happened. And the Prophet ﷺ is so pleased with him. And soon after, the verses of Surah Al-Hashr are revealed. Surah Al-Hashr, verse number 9. Again, because of the time, we don't have time to go into it, but go home and look up that verse for yourself. But look at the selflessness that this companion embodies. Not only does he volunteer to feed this guest, even though they barely have food to feed their own family, he goes to the extent of making sure the guest doesn't even realize that they didn't eat. Because then maybe the guest would have felt bad. Maybe then they would have, maybe given up some of their food so Abu Talha and his family could eat. This was the level of selflessness that the companions displayed. Even at the time of desperation, during war, one of the companions is basically lying in his deathbed, gasping for water. One of the other companions brings him water, and as soon as he's about to take a sip, he hears someone else next to him gasping for water. So that companion says, oh no, go give it to him. And as that companion is about to drink that water, he hears the third companion next to him also gasping for water. And he says, no, go give it to him. And by the time the water gets to the third companion, this person has passed away. So the person carrying the water, he goes back to the first person. And by the time he makes it to the first person, that companion has passed away. So he says, let me take it to the second person. And you can guess what happens there. Even in their dying moments, they were displaying this characteristic of ithar, of being selfless. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to embody this characteristic of putting other people before ourselves. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين واستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So some of us might be hearing this story and might be thinking, these were the companions, they were the cream of the crop. How am I supposed to compete with that? And it's true, it's very difficult to compete with that. But there are examples of individuals like this in our own lives that we've come across. And I'll share a couple of stories from my own father, rahimahullah. He was constantly thinking of other people. And there was a time when he was at the airport ready to take his flight. And as soon as the gate is open and they say, okay, boarding is now starting, everybody rushes to the gate. They want to be the first people to board, right? They want the best spot. They want to make sure they have a spot for their luggage and they're comfortable in their seats and ready to go. My dad was kind of just standing there, and my mom was with him, and she says, why aren't we boarding? Everyone's going to get these spots. So my dad says, it's okay. I mean, let them board. There's no need to kind of barge in front of somebody and get somebody upset. Let them go, we'll get a spot too. So finally they get to board, and all of them, the seats are taken. They realized that they had overbooked the flight. So they were actually upgraded to business class. SubhanAllah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always reward us for the selfless actions that you do in keeping other people in mind. So, what are some easy and effective ways that we can all embody this characteristic of being selfless? First and foremost, give preference to others in the du'as and the prayers that you make. When we wake up in the morning, we're thinking about, what do I have to do today? What am I going to eat today? What job do I have to get done today? What tasks at work do I have to get done today? How often do we wake up in the morning and we think about the condition of the other believers in the world? How often do we think about the problems that someone else might be facing? Or what someone else might be going through? And then secondly, we have to practice ithar with our parents. If our parents are still with us, give them preference over everything. There was a famous scholar who would always take care of his parents. Always taking care of his mother, always in the khidmat of his mother. But he would never do one thing with her. He would never sit down and share a meal with her. So people around him were curious. You do all of this stuff for your mom, but we've never seen you eat with her. How come? And he says, Wallahi, I would never want to take a bite from something that she wants to eat. This is the level. This is the preference that we give to our parents. And lastly, be mindful of the opportunities that are available to us to give preference to others. Meaning, it doesn't take a big feat to give preference to someone else. It could be something as simple as, hey, let me put my shoes in the shoe rack, so that when other people walk in, it doesn't get in their way. It doesn't take this large action for you to donate $1 million. It takes a small action to make a big difference in someone else's life, but we have to be thinking in that way. We have to be wanting to give preference to other people, otherwise the thought won't even cross my mind. I won't even think about, why I should put my shoes in the shoe rack. One of my teachers, he says, I always park far from the masjid entrance. I always park far, the farthest spot that I can find in the masjid. Why? Because someone else coming later, they can maybe find a closer spot. Right? Again, you might be thinking, oh, it's not a big deal, someone else is probably just going to take that spot after him. But imagine if all of us thought that way. If all of us thought that way, we would all park far. And truly the people coming late, they would get the closer spots. It would be a convenience for them. Right? So it's a mentality, it's a mindset that we all need to have. Look for those opportunities of being selfless in whatever capacity that we can. In this rush of life, in this so-called pursuit of happiness, don't stop giving preference to others. Communities and our families thrive on this companionship. They thrive on this level of sacrifice and this level of selflessness from one another. And the flip side is also true. Families and communities and societies are destroyed by being selfish and arrogant with each other. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us a people that are constantly selfless, even if it comes at the expense of some of our own time, our own energy, and our own money. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين. رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.
الله أكبر الله أكبر.